Did you know that 44% of all American adults have diabetes or prediabetes? That's right, you heard me correctly. Nearly half of the adult population has elevated blood sugar levels, or more technically, blood glucose. And yet 1/5 of all the people with diabetes don't even know they have it. And while there's many serious medical implications of having elevated blood glucose, it might also be a cause of what you think of as low energy. So today I'm going to be talking with Jill Weisenberger about 3 things you can do to prevent diabetes that will also boost your energy level. So whether you have diabetes or you have low energy, I think you're going to benefit from this discussion. Jill is a registered dietitian nutritionist, certified diabetes care and education specialist, certified health and wellness coach, and a certifiable food lover. Jill empowers people to grab control of their health, one lifestyle habit at a time. She's the author of 4 books, including the bestsellers, Prediabetes, A Complete Guide, Diabetes Weight Loss Week by Week, and she's also authored the e-guide, The Beginner's Guide to What to Eat with Type 2 Diabetes. So let's welcome Jill Weisenberger. All right. Hello, Jill. It's so good to see you again.
Hey.
Hey, I love the statistics that you gave me earlier about 1/3 of the population, adult Americans, have prediabetes, 12% have diabetes. When you think about that, that's about 1/2 of all adults.
A lot of people. So many people are affected. And an interesting statistic, though, is that only about 15% of people with prediabetes have had the diagnosis. And about 2/3 of the people with diabetes have the diagnosis. That's a lot of people who are missing out on opportunity for behavior change.
And, you know, I think that's one good reason to recommend to people to go visit their doctor or a medical professional on a yearly basis. It's oftentimes covered, or is it always covered by your insurance, I think now, these health visits. But we also know that diabetes isn't always diagnosed from a simple fasting blood sugar. Do you have any other recommendations for people to kind of keep their eyes open to the possibility that they might have diabetes or prediabetes? Are there some signs or symptoms or anything?
Well, there's really no signs and symptoms of prediabetes because it's very early on in the stage. By the time you get to diabetes, you may have symptoms or you may not. So some of the times the symptoms are blurry vision, and that's because there's a lot of sugar in the fluid. Sometimes fatigue, but you know, fatigue can be caused by so many things. Extra thirst. So those are some of the warning signs. But anybody over 45 should be tested. Anybody who's had gestational diabetes or has diabetes in their family, anybody with obesity should be tested earlier than 45. If you have high blood pressure or high triglycerides or low HDL cholesterol, those are other things that just kind of get packaged along with abnormal blood sugars. So we say that increases the risk and you should be tested earlier.
And of course, weight also increases your risks as well. So if you've been putting on more weight more recently, that might be a good thing to watch as well. And one of the reasons why I invited you on is because I believe that diabetes and energy are kind of intertwined.
They are. I agree.
In other words, when people complain that they have low energy, one of the things that we talk about in terms of diseases that could be causing that low energy is diabetes. Again, like you mentioned, not maybe pre-diabetes, and that's one of the reasons why you wanted to get tested so you can catch it before it gets too serious.
But fatigue is one of those things. But what I see happens so often with people is they get, and I'm sure you see the same thing, they get this like background level of low energy or this background level of fatigue, and they decide it's normal. And it just builds and builds and builds. So people with prediabetes and diabetes, and people even who don't have that, ones that I've worked with them to improve their diets and lifestyles, I often would hear, I didn't realize how lousy I felt till I started to feel better.
Yes, yeah, because you're right. It happens so slowly. In addition, I think we have these ideas that as we get older, it's just natural, normal, whatever, to be tired.
Well, I
And
don't know. I maybe aches and pains, but I don't get into being tired. That's not my thing.
no, of course we don't want to, but I think there's people who say, I used to run, I used to walk, I'm just too tired now, with the job, with the whatever that they have to do, they just
Yeah.
kind of blow it off
And I say,
don't.
go take that 10-minute walk and you probably have more energy.
Oh,
Right?
and we're going to be talking about, don't give away all these things. But in addition, let's talk about what are the dangers. I mean, so what if you have diabetes? I mean, why do we need to be concerned that our blood sugar is a little bit elevated?
Well, diabetes is really more than just a blood sugar problem. And so is prediabetes, because, prediabetes is just an earlier stage of
Right.
type 2 diabetes. But they're really more than a blood sugar problem, because what it is an inaction or inability of the hormone insulin to work properly. And so we see that in blood sugar because that's something that's easy to measure. But insulin has actions other than moving sugar out of the blood and into the cells. It has actions all over the body. So the main risk for people with prediabetes and diabetes is heart disease. It's the number one killer of Americans. It's the number one killer of women, of men, of whites, of blacks, Hispanics. It's just the number one killer. And then when you add diabetes to it, you have double to quadruple your risk for heart disease and stroke. And it's not just that. There's even an additional cancers that are associated with diabetes and prediabetes.
Wow.
So it's hurts my soul, my diabetes educator, nutritionist soul, when people think of diabetes and prediabetes with that myopic view that it's just a blood sugar problem. It's not. It's much more holistic, so systemic.
Very good. And, as much as people hear about cancer, because we know people that are going through cancer or have gone through cancer or worried because of a certain sign that they might have cancer. So cancer is a big word out there. And we kind of forget that cancer isn't what gets most of us. It's heart disease. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, and it contributes to the narrowing of those blood vessels, especially those tiny little blood vessels in our eyes and our kidney. Isn't diabetes like the leading cause of
kidney failure?
Yeah, I think so. And even blindness too. And don't forget gangrene, all of that kind of stuff. So yes, I think that's a good point to mention. It isn't just about, oh, my blood sugars are a little high.
It is not about that.
Yeah. And I hear people all the time kind of blow it off and say, oh, my blood sugars are a touch high. Okay, a little high is okay. No, let's get it down into the normal range. And yeah, you'll feel better. In fact, what we're going to be talking about is 3 ways to prevent diabetes that will also boost your energy. So you're tying in your strength about diabetes and my strength with the energy together, because we're partners in all this. So share with us, one of those ways that we can prevent diabetes, but also boost our energy at the same time.
Okay, so I think a lot of people do know that exercise is important for blood sugar control, but there's 3 types of exercise that I feel are absolutely critical, whether you have diabetes, prediabetes, or you're just trying to prevent them. So the first one is cardiovascular or aerobic exercise. So basically what happens is when you go out there for a fast walk or a jog or a bike or something like that, you are making your cells more sensitive to insulin. So the body takes up blood sugar more easily. And that will last for 2 hours to 2 days. Depending on you and your intensity and duration and many other things. But you could have a boost in insulin sensitivity for 2 days from one workout. So in
other words, your insulin will just plain work better.
Yes.
And if your insulin works better naturally, then it allows you a little bit more freedom later on.
Exactly.
Whether it's medication or the insulin or with diet, because your body works better.
Yes, excellent. So just every single time you go for an exercise session, you've done yourself some good. So I know a lot of times people say, but I just can't get into the habit. Okay, you can't get into the habit. Go out now. because you have up to 2 days of benefit from it,
Yeah.
plus whatever benefit you get right now.
Yeah.
So that's the one. The other one is also the strength training, which a lot of people, particularly women, fight me on this. They just don't want to do it. But ladies, come on, we need it. We need it.
Yeah.
So
not to get big bulky muscles like men, because we don't have the hormones that
exactly,
will
we
allow
won't.
that. But yeah.
So not only do you have the same insulin sensitivity boost, making your insulin work better, but also muscle is where blood sugar wants to go after eating. So that's the normal thing that happens after we eat. We get a rise in the blood sugar and it wants to go into muscle. Well, if you don't have a lot of muscle, you don't have a lot of place to put it.
Mm-hmm.
So I want you to think about muscle like it's a bucket, like a rain bucket. If you go outside during a rainstorm and you have a little tiny bucket, you're going to collect a little tiny bit of water. If you go outside during a rainstorm and you have a big bucket, you're going to collect a whole lot of water. So your muscle is like that bucket for blood sugar.
And since I live in Florida, I find some relevance to that, because if I have a big rain bucket, that means I can water my garden without spending a lot of money. If I have a little bucket, it's going to cost me a ton of money, right?
Yes.
I mean, in the end, it costs you by not doing that exercise. And, I have my extra tube over there. The stretchy tubes, because people think that they need to go to the gym and they need to, lift heavy weights.
You can do body weight squats and all kinds of things.
Hold a push-up position for a minute.
Yeah, that's rough.
Yeah, that is rough.
Planks are hard.
Yeah, they are hard. And that was something that I introduced a couple of years ago. And, but I mean, that is so good for the whole body. And
of course it is.
It's just 1 minute. And that's why I always tell people, sometimes they think it's, this big 45-minute session, which wouldn't be bad. And some people like to do that. But yeah, sometimes it just takes a few minutes here and there. And that's why I have my extra tube, which is a resistance band. I'll put that in the show notes with some handles on it. And you can do a lot of exercises with that resistant tube.
You can. And, speaking of just doing like a 1 minute plank or even a 30-second plank.
Oh yeah, 30 seconds is a good way to, 15 seconds to begin with.
So that takes me to the third aspect of exercise that I think is so important, and it's just not being sedentary. So, I went out for a 30-minute jog this morning and I did a 15-minute weight training session. But what if I just sat here the rest of the day? That's not good for my energy. It's not good for my blood sugar. It's linked to higher risk of heart disease, higher risks of cancer, higher risks of diabetes. So just making sure that you're not sedentary. So the American Diabetes Association recommendation is for you to break up periods of sedentary behavior with 3 minutes of exercise every half hour. So not if you're just going to sit for an hour, but if you have like a 4-hour webinar, try to get up every half hour for 2 to 3 minutes. Do a plank and do some, just walking in place or something like that.
Yeah.
And you and I both know that affects like the whole body, how you feel, your energy, and your mind. Clears up the mind.
Right. And research has shown that those, what we call microbursts of activity, can actually boost your energy, your mood, decrease your fatigue, all of that. So and interestingly, the research shows, we used to think you had to do all your exercise in one chunk, like you did, 30 minutes of exercise, when in fact, every minute counts.
It does.
And so if you think about it, could you get in a little bit of exercise? You said 3 minutes every 30 minutes. I mean, think about that.
That's
3 minutes. That's 6 minutes an hour. If you're sitting for 8 hours, you've done almost an hour worth of exercise.
Right. And it can be little things, just like push-ups against the wall or push-ups against your desk or,
run down the hall to the laundry room, change out the laundry, come on back.
Reminds me I have laundry.
But for those people who are working from the house, there's always those kind of tasks that you can do in between, so you're not sitting on your butt. And another thing for all of us to remember is we don't think real well when we're sitting on our butt. There's just something, I don't know about you, like when you're planning a presentation, Jill, right? and you can't think and can't think. You go for a walk and somehow those thoughts come to you.
Well, Joe,
that or in
right
the shower.
here, I have my treadmill desk.
Oh, wonderful.
And I wrote 3 of my 4 books on that treadmill desk, walking
Wow.
1.5 miles per hour.
Yeah, which is a nice slow pace, but otherwise you can't kind of type. I also have.
Oh, a little balance thing.
Yeah, it's not a boosie ball because it's hard, but it's got grippies on it. So for those of you who are in webinars, and I stand on it and just kind of rotate from side to side. And it's not too annoying for people to see somebody doing that. But I'll tell you, it's a lot of fun. Yeah. And then if you go sliding off, actually they have ones that are like this that you can
I've seen that
skateboard. Yeah. And I'm thinking, no, I think I'm a little too old to be trying that out just yet. But this is pretty safe, especially on the carpet. It has a lot of good grip. Yeah. So think about just small little things. So the first way that we can prevent diabetes and boost our energy is through exercise. Every little minute counts.
And all 3 ways are important.
Right.
Aerobic, strength, and not being sedentary.
Right. Microbursts throughout the day. Excellent. Okay. And what's the second way?
Well, honestly, just balancing your meals out and eating to hunger is super important. So if you have prediabetes or diabetes, basically you can eat what anybody else would eat, but you really do have to pay attention to how much you eat at one time. And if your meals are relatively balanced. No, you don't have to pull out any calculators or anything like that, but just are they relatively balanced? And this is what I mean when people have said to me, I didn't know how lousy I felt till I started to feel better. And sometimes all we did was balance breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And you can do that with the simple plate method that I use in diabetes. So it's basically you just take a 9-inch plate, not a platter, but a 9-inch plate, divide it in half, and half of it gets your non-starchy vegetables like zucchini and lettuce, tomatoes, carrots, broccoli, cauliflower, that type of thing. And then the other half is just divided up evenly between a starchy food and a protein-rich food. So, you could have yes, that's what it looks like.
And that's exactly what I teach. It is the simplest way to think about it. Hey, let me interrupt for just 1 second to let you all know that you can download that easy, simple meal plan at drjo.com/meal plan. MEALPLAN. All right, let's get back to talking with Jill. And as long as I call it 1, 2, 3, ABC, whatever it is. And you've probably taught that to your girls as well. I know I have. When my daughter, I hated packing lunch, hated packing lunch. It was something I refused to do. And so when my daughter went off to the 1st grade, I taught her how we're going to plan our meals. You got to have a protein, you got to have a starch, you got to have, some fruits or vegetables. We had dairy as well. And, she planned it, and she still does it that way.
My girls know how to make a meal. They would come back from school and they would say that they didn't think that, a friend's parent must have really cared about what they ate because they just had junk food in their lunches.
It's like, what a mean mommy that's funny the way we've brainwashed them.
I know.
And when I met my husband, I taught him the same thing,
I did too.
Yeah, this is the way you're going to do it. And it's not just because it gives us the nutrition that we need. It provides us with the sustained energy that we need through the rest. Because if you're eating just carbs, bread and chips, or something that's high in that, I don't know, hot dogs and French fries. I saw that at a weekend meal. I mean, hot dog has hardly any protein, and then you got French fries, and then you're drinking high C or soda. It is so high carb that it's going to go into your bloodstream really fast. You're going to, even if you don't have diabetes, think about the energy. You just have this rush of energy, and 2 hours later you're crashing.
But it's not just having, a carb heavy meal. Any unbalance, it can be super high in protein and not having enough carbs. And it's the same thing. So just balance it out. And the other thing is to eat to hunger, because when you eat past hunger, you're going to have higher blood sugar. Particularly if you have prediabetes or diabetes, you're going to have higher blood sugars, blood sugar levels. But also, like, people get so worked up sometimes about, oh, this is an inflammatory food and this is an anti-inflammatory food. But it doesn't matter what you eat. If you are overeating, it is inflammatory.
Right. It's the excess fat that is inflammatory, not the food itself. Yeah.
Well, excess calories at one fell swoop is not good.
Yeah, no, it isn't.
So just balance it and eat to hunger.
Yeah.
So yes, the little plate that you drew is exactly what I would say.
And Jill, I am not a vegetarian. And sometimes people will ask me about that. You're a dietitian and you're not a vegetarian. I mean, don't you believe in plant-based foods? And I'm like, yeah, I do. I eat a plant-based diet, but
So do I.
not right. But it does include protein, that does include animal meat. And so often I see people say at a conference, because I'm a speaker and I travel quite a lot, and I travel with other speakers sometimes. And because there is nothing on the menu that is vegetarian other than the salad, they end up eating just a leafy salad.
I have seen that too.
Yeah. So
that's not nutritious.
No, it isn't. And not, yeah. So you don't have the protein. They wonder why they're crashing mid-afternoon. And even that sprinkle of cheese is not an adequate amount. So for me, being a flexitarian or being flexible in the way that I eat just makes
That's how
life
I think of
easier.
myself.
Yeah.
It's also more fun, more interesting.
It is.
Particularly if you're traveling to another country. Like if you're traveling to another country, do you really want to say no to the specialty of that country? Like when I went to Hungary, my grandmother was from Hungary. It's like, how could I not eat chicken paprikash? I mean, grandma made chicken paprikash all the time. How could I not eat it in her country?
I don't know what chicken paprikash is. What is it?
It's paprika chicken. And it's got some onions and bell peppers, lots of paprika. It's delicious.
Oh, that's good. Well, we were kind of neighbors. I'm 100% Lithuanian.
I see.
So for us, it was the potato pancakes. And I always remember Granny would come and she'd grate the potatoes by
with a box grater.
Like a box grater. But keep in mind that it is my parents and 9 kids. And that's a lot of potato pancakes. And she'd come to the table afterwards with her Band-Aids. And we'd always be joking about who ate the skin to go along with our potato pancakes.
Oh, gosh.
But they were the best. So I guess it included a little skin and blood was necessary. I know that sounds kind of gross, but it was Granny, so it was okay. All right, so we want to balance that meal, and I'll include some links in the web and our in the show notes about how to balance that.
Yeah, I have something on my site that I've written up, and it has like a little like a little download, I think.
Oh, that's fabulous. Yeah. And even eating to hunger, getting used to the fact that we want to be satisfied, but not necessarily full.
Right.
And for some of us, that requires a little bit of training, kind of reminding ourselves, I don't need to be full. Full isn't good. That's going to make us feel a little sluggish later on. It's certainly going to elevate our blood sugar. So how can we just feel, I always call it Goldilocks, perfect.
That's right. That's right.
You don't want to eat too much. You don't want to eat too little. You want it to be just right to get.
Yeah, I think the problem for a lot of people, at least the problem with a lot of people that I've worked with, is that they don't stop to think about how they feel. They just are kind of on autopilot. They eat until the food is gone, or they eat until the time is up.
Right.
Instead of, paying attention to how they feel.
And probably because they're doing a lot of other things in addition, watching their show, reading a book, chatting with people or whatever, and not paying attention. We were at a Thanksgiving function years ago, back when my daughter, who is a grown adult now, but was a little kid, and she watched people on this long table, one by one, stand up and go, "Oh, I ate too much," right? And she nudged me and she said, "Mom, I know what your next book should be. You can call it the stand up and lose weight diet. And, she's so right. Isn't it true? Like you're sitting down, you don't really notice. It's not until you like stand up and you say, oh gosh, I ate so much. I don't know what it is about that. And I think that really helped me to maintain a normal weight after I had my daughter, because like in a restaurant or even in the middle of the meal, she'd say, Mom, I got to pee, And so you get up, you go to the bathroom, you come back and you say, you know what? I've had enough. It's just that extra little moment to focus on it. You realize I don't need to continue eating, but we get in this habit and it's hard to.
It's an autopilot. It just is. Right. I mean, in so many ways, autopilot is good for us because we know how to back out of the driveway and tie our shoes, and so we need these things. We remember to lock the door, and when we go to bed, and turn the peanut butter jar, twist it on. So autopilot is good, but it can get in the way too.
Of our eating, certain. Okay, so we're gonna 3 types of exercise, incorporate that in the day, and also, pay attention to those 3 meals a day. And I do believe in 3 meals a day. 3 well-balanced meals a day. Watch our hunger. Is there anything else that we can do?
The other thing is something that I say to everybody is put your emphasis and your focus on the things that actually matter. Because it's very, very easy to get into the minutia of, did I take that, supplement at the right hour? Or did I, balance?
Or do I even need, what kind of supplements do I need?
Exactly. Or did I balance my meal just right? It's like, or, did I drink X number of cups of water today and things like that. It's like, it's very easy to get focused on little details that you just don't put your energy where it really should be. Like, what is it going to take for me today to get outside and take that walk? What is it going to take for this week for me to have the groceries so I can make some nice meals? What am I going to make this week? What do I want to eat this week? What will nourish my family this week? So these are bigger things that we just kind of forget because we're really just stuck on those tiny little details that somehow we think is magical. Like people really think like I have to drink a certain amount of ice cold water because ice cold water will boost your metabolic rate. Yeah, it's true, but it's, it's like 12 calories a cup, 8 to 12, I think it's 8 calories a cup. So at the end of the day, you would have had, more energy, less anxiety, less worry. Just take a walk.
Right. And don't worry about your pulse. That would be another kind of little minutia. People, they're trying to make sure they walk and get their pulse up to a certain amount. It's like, what?
Just go out and have fun.
Yeah, maybe look at the beautiful flowers in the sun.
Yeah. So I was listening to another podcast about the book Effortless. And so it's by Greg McKeown, who wrote Essentialism a few years ago. And he just put out Effortless. And he says, the first question you should ask yourself is, how can I make this easier? I love that. How can I make this easier? How can I make healthy eating easier? How can I make exercise easier? How can I make healthy living easier, more fun, more convenient, more pleasant, less draining? And that's what I want people to do. And I want them to stop worrying about all the little details and following the super strict diets. And so that's why I put together my program called Stick With It. It's a video course, and it helps people to make appropriate goals and learn about motivation and learn how to stick with those things instead of just, you don't have to pull out a calculator and you don't have to, like you said, measure your pulse. You just need to get into a good rhythm.
And
be open-minded.
Where can somebody find out more about this?
Oh, that's on my website. There's a video course on my website. You can just go to jillweisenberger.com. You can spell Weisenberger.
I will put that in the show notes to make sure everybody gets that. So that's really useful. Yeah. That quote that you just said kind of reminds me of the one thing.
Yes.
What is the one thing that you could do such that by doing it, everything else becomes easier or unnecessary?
Right. And
so many times when I'm talking with busy people, executives who are doing so much and finding out, like I remember this one guy, was approaching 50 and he got back from a doctor's appointment. His he's gained 50 pounds through his adult years. His cholesterol's up, his blood pressure is up, his energy is low. And then he realized, like, oh my gosh, my dad died at the age of 50 and I'm almost there. You know, they kind of freak out, like, and they want this special diet. And the more we talked about it, the more I realized, you know what, the one thing that you could do that would make more difference than anything else is to get some sleep. He was trying to get on with about 4 hours of sleep every night.
Oh yeah, that's horrible.
He had convinced, right. And people don't realize getting 4 hours of sleep messes up with your hunger and thirst. So
It
that
does.
you have a tendency to overeat. You don't feel like exercise because you're tired.
It's linked to diabetes,
It's
cancer,
linked to
heart
diabetes.
disease.
Yes. And so in his case, that's what I figured, that, you know, I hate that, you know, forget about all this other stuff, because he was looking for a long, you know, he wanted a workout and a diet.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
I know that person. I see those people all the time. They want all the little details, all of it. It's just like, sometimes I want to say, just eat more vegetables, you know?
Right.
How about
Because
if you
eat more vegetables,
every lunch and dinner?
Right. You won't feel like eating some of the other stuff as well. I know. Let's get back to basics, Jill. And I appreciate you coming on to share some of these simple little things that we can do.
Oh, it's fun chatting with you.
It doesn't have to be so difficult.
No,
well, thank you very much. I'll put that in the show notes, jillweisenberger.com.
Yeah.
And there'll be some other resources as well. So we'll see you all next week. Bye.
Bye.